Welcome to the Frank James Podcast. Today's guest is incredible. Let's just put that out there. Let's get that out of the way first. Today we have the amazingly versatile, the amazingly talented, the amazingly creative Malinda Kathleen Reese with 1.2 million subscribers on YouTube for her Twisted Translations channel. I'm sure you've seen it. It's the Mondo hits for years now on there, and a massive following of 2.7 million on TikTok for her enchanting Irish covers. Her success speaks volumes, but she's not just about numbers. She's a powerhouse of creativity. She released her latest album, It's All True, earlier this year and is currently on the final handful of dates of a nationwide tour around the US. From the digital stage to the real one, from YouTube to original music, Malinda's journey is rich and inspiring. In fact, she's one of the inspirations for me when I first started my YouTube channel. She had a big impact on me. Today we're going to dive deep, whichever way you want to say it, into her creative process and the inspirations that fuel her artistic drive. Let's dive in. Maybe that's the place to start, is to talk about having such a successful channel, or at least from an outsider's perspective, it seemed like you could just come out with almost anything and have a hit with your original YouTube channel, now known as Twisted Translations. Was it difficult to make that pivot away from that? And I know you focused more on TikTok, and now your other channel, where you post music, like you're doing great with shorts and stuff over there. Was it clear to you, like, yes, I need to pivot away from this? Or was it like, I got to make sure I've got my hand on this other rung before I let go of this one? Like, what was that transition like?
To be honest with you, it was definitely the latter, because I felt ready for a good 3 years before I really stopped making videos on that channel. And I felt ready to start moving away from it, but I had no idea where I was moving to, and it wasn't like I was just gonna, stop completely. And I was still enjoying making those videos, but I knew that it had a life cycle, as a lot of channels like that do, where it was such a part of my life in such a distinctive way, and that it taught me how to deal with the world online. But it was such a great shield, because it wasn't me. It was this wonderful gimmick and these wonderful characters that I got to play. And so I could learn the ropes of everything, like how to make videos, how to deal with online comments and stuff like that, without it being too vulnerable. But there reached a point where I was like, I have a lot to share as an artist, and I do want to try and hit these more vulnerable places and see what happens. And so, but doing that while letting go of, what was my baby, like didn't feel right. And so I actually, like, literally the year before TikTok popped off, I had brought on Tom McGovern, who's this phenomenal comedian now doing his own thing phenomenally. And we were going to basically build out a cast to try to continue the channel, but like take it off of my hands as much as possible. And so we were in the process of doing that. And then it was like the universe was like, really? You're not listening to me? Oh my God. Okay, push. And then TikTok happened. Like it was this moment of like, you really cannot dedicate your time to this anymore. And Tom McGovern had the exact same thing happen to him on TikTok as well. And so both of us looked at each other. We were like, we can't sustain this anymore. Like, this just isn't going to happen. And so it was a very mutual decision. It was a very strong, like, okay, officially now is the time, where like just our time is being taken by other beautiful things that are very exciting to us. And so the transition happened actually very naturally, as most of my pivots have. But there comes a point at which you have to be like, okay, I am open to the next thing. And I'm very much in that place right now, where I'm like, I'm open to whatever is going to happen in my career next. And so, yeah, there's an art to staying open while also like keeping your feet on the ground and making and continuing to make stuff and continuing to exercise your creativity and keep people around and continue to feel productive and make good stuff while you're also open to like whatever could come your way. And so that has not always been the most like graceful process, but it's one that I've gone through like probably 3 or 4 times already, and I expect to go through many other times.
Wow, yeah. So it wasn't quite 100% a leap of faith so much as like being like continually like pushed by the universe and
yes, pushed by other
realizing
things.
Resisting for a while and realizing, okay, let me finally do this.
Yeah, I knew in my heart, I was like, I know this is going to happen eventually, but like, you know, financially and emotionally and everything, I was like, no, like I've built this thing that like allowed me to quit my day job. It allowed me to, you know, to live a life that was creative entirely. And that was so wonderful. And I was like, I don't want to give that up. And so I'm going to continue doing this as long as I'm still enjoying it, which I was, until something else comes along. And then when the something else came along, I was like, great, cool, we've got it. And so, yeah, I did not make a leap of faith at that time, to be honest with you. And I feel like the first leap of faiths that I've really started to take have been now, when I'm like actually engaging in like the music industry as a whole, you know, rather than kind of making my own way. It's much harder to pivot into an industry that really already exists, rather than, I felt like, you know, when you're a social media person, you can really build your own career and build your own path. And especially at the time, there were like no rules, you know. And so there was just no expectation. And I feel like right now I'm pivoting into an area in which there's a lot more expectation, and I'm navigating that, which is fascinating. But yeah, so I try not to make pivots where I don't have at least one hand still on some kind of rung, because, you know, you don't want to totally fall.
Man, that's so true, because like you started that, because I saw the first video I saw of yours was like way back, like in 2014 or something. So you were really making that channel on YouTube when it was a bit more unstructured. It's not like it is completely. Even now. I mean, it's 9 years later, but where it's like,
almost
you know, it's like much more, we have to please the algorithm kind of thing. And it's a little less obvious what,
100%.
You know, yeah.
Not that didn't exist, though. Like, the algorithm was
Right.
already the big topic of conversation even at the time, but the algorithm worked extremely differently. It was much more in favor of creators. There wasn't a For You page model. It was a subscription model, and a recommended model, which is very, very different and creates a very different type of community around creators, which I think that's the fundamental difference. Where, like, if you asked me how to grow a YouTube channel in 2023, I'd be like, I have no idea. Because at the time, like, just the way that everything was structured was dramatically different. It was still around algorithms, though, and so like the language of trying to decipher what's going on and how things are changing was something that I had to learn like pretty early on, and I still to this day, you know, still don't know what's going on, and no one does. And I think just like having the time under your belt to like accept that that's the case and just be like, nah. Yeah, just, you know, you can think you know so much, and then something will always surprise you when it comes to trying to like play the game of social media. And so I try to be as open as possible to those surprises. And I think honestly, like, doing Irish music and folk music was a surprise. Like, I did not think that was gonna like go viral on social media, but then it did, and here we are. You know, so you always got to be open to the things that might surprise you.
Yeah. So tell me about that with this transition to TikTok. And how that got started, and when it became clear, like, oh, like, this is where I should go.
Well, I mean, I've been playing Irish music in pubs since I was like 12. So I started learning Irish flute, and I started learning Irish songs, and there were sessions outside of DC that would happen every second and fourth Sunday of the month that were specifically for teens, run by this amazing fiddle teacher named Mitch Fanning. And that brought all of these like teenagers together, both to hang out, but also to like engage in our culture. And it was incredibly beautiful. And to have that in my life for so long was phenomenal. And then I went to college, and it kind of went away. There like really wasn't an outlet to explore it. And so I like had this Irish stuff in my back pocket for a long time, and it bled its way into my theater life in all kinds of ways. But then the sea shanty trend popped off on TikTok. Everyone was obsessed with the Wellerman and sea shanties in general for like 2 months. And I was like, oh, I know songs kind of like this. And so I started, you know, singing some songs on TikTok, being like, if y'all like this, you might like this, because this is the stuff I grew up with. You know, I love it. And then things just started popping off, and I've always been one to kind of roll with it, especially if I'm having a really good time, and so I did. And when I realized, like, oh, there's really an audience for this, and there's a deep community in this, and sides of this music that I haven't explored yet, but this is my time to explore it, just creatively and musically. Things like Seanos music, singing in Irish. For me personally, it was just so... It was very personal. It was like, oh, this is something that for my own artistic life, I need to explore right now. And the fact that I'm buoyed by support with that is like, just icing on the cake. And so, again, a lot of my career has been accidents, or what feel like accidents, but are honestly just like skill and opportunity crashing into each other. And this was one of those moments where it was like, okay, I have the skill set for this. I know how to do this, and people are down for it, and here we go. So that's really what it was. And I am so incredibly grateful for that transition, because it was such a wake up call to like, hey, this thing that was gonna like support you for the rest of your life, emotionally and spiritually and musically, this music that has been in your blood, for so long, was what was going to support you. It's been staring you in the face the whole time, It really was this moment of like, it's always been here. I just had to tap into it, and great, got it. Here we go. So it was awesome it was like a little wake up call. And I was just happy to receive it and happy to roll with it.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear about the differences there between TikTok and what you like, if there was a learning curve, or what you found about how people are there, the audiences, if you tried to bring that kind of content over to YouTube, and how that fared. Like, what was this logistically with this transition of focus?
Well, one of the beautiful things about TikTok was I decided early on, I didn't post on TikTok for about a year, because I was just watching to see what the culture of this thing was developing. And it felt a lot like YouTube in the early days, this sort of Wild West, like, anything is possible. And I loved the notion of duets and being able to expand upon things, especially musically. I thought that was so cool. And so I really observed it for such a long time. And then when I started posting, it was like, I'm not doing anything Translate related on this. I'm going to let this be like Malinda play space, because no one here cares about what other people think of them right now. Like that was TikTok in the early days. Everyone was just kind of being stupid, and it was wonderful. So I was like, great, this is going to be like Malinda play space to see what is possible. And so I had lots of people like recognizing me from Google Translate Sings, but honestly, like just as many people who were like, wait, what? Like had no idea what that life was before. Most people I've worked with in my like Irish music life have no idea that existed. Or they like found out later.
Wow.
Oh yeah. And so I think that was what honestly helped that transition a lot. And in terms of coming back into YouTube, which I did, I had a second channel come 2017, I believe, is when I started my second channel, and that was going to be, again, Malinda's play space to kind of do what I wanted to do. I started releasing music around then, and so I had a place where I could do my own thing, but I don't think anybody expected it to turn into like a super folk music space, because I kind of started out in like pop, slightly musical theater vibe. Mm-hmm. And so when the heavy folk music came, I think people were definitely surprised, but a lot of people ran with it. And I love that I've been a bit of a gateway drug for a lot of people to be like, wait, this music is very cool. And now they listen to like other people that influenced me. And I've had a lot of people come to my first tour where they were like, this is the first time I've ever been to a show like this with this music ever. And I love it. It was great, And so I think that's very special. And at my premiere of my visual album that I had, so many people, like before anyone asked a question, they were like, I've been following you since Google Translate Sings. Like a lot of people have for some reason stuck it out. It makes no sense, and I love it. Like it's like, oh, people are as eclectic and wild as me. It's so special to see that people have just been like, yeah, I bet, sure. In terms of just trusting me with whatever that's gonna be, and I feel humbled to be entrusted with that by an audience, because that's the thing, is like when you're making a pivot, your audience has to trust you. You have to develop a trust with people that's like, I know where I'm going, I'm excited about it, and if you don't like it, that is more than okay, like kick me to the curb. But if if this is something that you're open to the way I'm open to it, I think we're going to have a really good time. And I've been very grateful to have an audience that was so supportive of that and willing to kind of go with whatever. So yeah, I feel I have a bunch of different audiences that are all kind of like swirling around together between the GTS audience, the super folk music audience, the people that are really into my original music. Like everyone kind of hangs out together, and it's, yeah, I love it. It's great.
That, I mean, yeah, that is an amazing thing to, especially to have an audience who will go with you when you're trying out something new, when you're doing that pivot, because I feel like it can be tough. Like I've experienced people, it's like people won't go with me even with like a micro shift, and I'm like, okay, so what do I have to figure out here, like to get you to come along? Do you know what the secret sauce is there? Is it just your magnetic? Yeah, your magnetic
just my magnetic personality. No.
Is it or is it? Was there any? It doesn't. I mean, it sounds like you just kind of follow your what you feel you're being drawn to, and it's not so much like this master plan of like, oh, let me see how I can bring all these people in.
No, I very genuinely, the secret sauce is just your own passion and excitement, and just being like, I think this is so cool. And if there were plenty of people who were like, I don't know what she's doing, and what I loved so much was when I first started posting on TikTok, and if people recognize me, so many people would say, oh my God, you were my childhood. What I realized is that people view that phase of my career as this piece of nostalgia, basically. And that was so freeing to see that people held that part of my career in a very particular time of their lives, and seeing me again was like seeing an old friend. And I was like, actually, what a beautiful new place to start, because when you meet up with an old friend, you are expecting that something new is going to happen. Right. And so when I had that opportunity to sort of reintroduce myself to people, I had a bit of a blank slate, and that was really awesome. And I think TikTok was honestly so helpful with that, because it was this new play space. Yeah, being able to accept that when you are doing like a certain project, that it has a curvature to it. It has a build, a peak, and then it can, if you want to, it can have a resolution, as you're figuring out where you want to go next, and allowing that work of art, kind of like a TV show, to live in people's memories as a time in their lives that, maybe they were going through a certain thing, and that's where they turned to your work to, help them get through that very particular time in their life. Like that's what I feel like I was able to give to people with that, and to be able to be able to rest in the knowledge that will always exist, that I'd never have to let go of that beauty is just so wonderful. And so, yeah, I think the secret is being really excited about what you're doing next, but also being really grateful for the impact that you have, however big or small, and knowing that doesn't go away. It's the impact, the work may go away, but the impact does not. And that's really special.
I've never thought about it in that way. So that's a very insightful thing. How do you then take it from your online audience to an audience in real life? So this is what, your second tour that you're about to go on? Yeah,
the first big long tour. My first tour was 2 weeks, and this is 5.5 weeks, and so it's very different. Yeah, way different scale. And my first tour was also it was very session-y. We were sitting down. It was very acoustic. This tour is not that. It's much more poppy, but we're doing an acoustic set in the middle of it, so it's both very intimate, but also hopefully will help people levitate out of the theater. That is the goal. This is the classic question, to be honest with you, of how do you convert people to thinking again, it's about trust. It's does your audience trust you to give them a really good experience in a different setting? And I think people from social media, there are plenty of creators who have really struggled with that and struggled with that transition. And then there have been some who were meant to make that transition from the beginning. And I am hoping that I've always felt like one of those people because I grew up doing theater. I grew up performing. Like, it's not like this is a new thing for me. The transition for me feels incredibly natural. And that's why I'm so excited about it, is I'm like, these are the space that I have wanted to create online, this space of thoughtfulness and joy, and being able to hold joy and tragedy in the same space. You know, like, we've been building this beautiful community for so long, and when I have been able to put it into practice in person, it has been just so transformational and so beautiful. And I'm like, I want to cultivate those experiences a lot more intentionally and a lot more actively. And so honestly, it's been such a beautiful like study for me. And I want to continue to study the art of space making and incorporating that into my shows and talking about that more online, because I just think it's so important. Like, I'm getting my body's doing the thing where it's like, yes, I'm excited, you know. Yeah. Right now it really gets me going, and especially after creating online for so long, it feels like the next chapter for me to finally be able to take this in person and be of service artistically in that way. Because I feel like I've been of service online in such a beautiful way for a long time, and it's like, okay, it's time to really focus on this aspect of my artistry. And in terms of like how you get people to trust that, again, just me being passionate and excited hopefully will be enough. Logistically, it's very difficult, like especially with TikTok, like with the new For You page model, the ability to build a fan base and to build not just a fan base but community, like fans who know each other and are excited to see each other, is much more difficult to do, because you know, you come by your screen, you might follow the person and then they're gone, and who knows whether or not you're going to see that person again. It is entirely dependent on where the algorithm is at with you, and that's really difficult. It's really, really hard to build that community, and so I think had things stayed in a more creator model, it would probably be a lot easier. But you know, we make things work with what we got, and I do think that the model of the music industry being so wrapped up in a song's success on TikTok, and honestly, like, people's creative success and touring life is really wrapped up in that right now, and I don't think that's a good system. I don't think it's a good measure of success. I don't think it's a good way to get people to try to engage with you. I think there's just a lot of people are kind of turning back to like some old school models of marketing and engaging with people, because it's really draining. It's a machine to have to constantly push yourself into TikTok, because there's just so much content that you have to make. It's very high effort and very exhausting, and I am very burnt out on it right now, in fact, and I'm trying right now to, you know, to reclaim that part of me and be like, no, tour is what I am genuinely excited for, and I want people to know about that. I'm not like promoting tour. I'm excited about tour, and I'm telling people that. Like, that's what it is. And so that's been a mindset shift that I've really had to try to cultivate, and I'm currently trying to cultivate more. But yeah, I've seen so many musicians burn out trying to create a traditional music career out of a foundation that is anything but traditional. That is very difficult to do. And I think I'm definitely struggling with that right now. But nothing has to be traditional. I don't have to have a traditional music path either. If I've learned anything in my career, nothing has to go the way it's gone for other people, and I'm cool with that. So yeah, I don't know. I'll let you know. I'll let you know how it goes.
Good. Yeah, I mean, your path has been unconventional, if anything, so far. So is it like anyone in the music industry who wants to build an audience needs to go to TikTok, or is it just sort of like, if you have built an audience on TikTok, you need to stay there?
It's anyone who wants to build an audience in the music industry has to go through TikTok at this point.
Wow.
Like, I heard Ryan Tedder, who is the lead singer for One Republic, wrote Bleeding Love and like a bunch of other incredibly successful songs, say in an interview at one time, nothing I have done over the last, over a decade plus has mattered. Like, none of the rooms I've been in, the sessions I get to go to, the awards I've won, all of that, none of that matters if my new songs don't go viral on TikTok. And I was like,
wow.
devastating. Like, this is a guy that is like so well respected in the music industry and so successful, and he's like, you know, that's his view on it, and I see that, and I hear all the time, like, my independent artist friends being like, you know, this, I'm not going to get on this playlist unless my song goes viral on TikTok. And they've literally been told that by things like Spotify and Apple Music and that kind of thing. Like, there is this weird reliance on this incredibly broken system, you know, like TikTok, in terms of TikTok and music in particular right now, especially this year, 2023, is very broken. It's so broken. And so I think it's an awful system. It is technically more democratic, but also way more just oversaturated and much harder I think it's harder for an artist to get started these days than ever before. It's really easier on a technical level, but harder on a macro level, in that there's just so much happening. And I think it's even more lightning in a bottle than it used to be. And is it more equal opportunity for it to happen? Yes, 1,000%. And I think ultimately that is a good thing. Like, fundamentally, that is an excellent thing. But my gripe with it is that the music industry is so reliant on it. It's like completely invalidating. If this isn't the path that you took, then it's not sustainable in their minds. And I'm like, I don't think people are thinking about what sustainability actually is, which is a complete lack of reliance on these platforms that are changing constantly, and some of them are dying. Like, Vine came and went, you know, Twitter dying. And so I think, the fact that a lot of industries are like putting so much emphasis on these platforms is, I think, a very bad idea. And so I don't entirely know what the solution is, but I'm trying to remove my own self-worth from being tied to these platforms so much, and trying to honestly engage more in person. It's one of the reasons I want to tour more, is so that I can just get in front of people and say hi and create community in that way. Because you know, especially post-pandemic, it's like it's really important that we do that. And so that's where my focus is turning right now, because it feels the most in line with like my values, and most in line with what I think is sustainable, honestly.
Because it's also like the difference between having a video get 1 million views and playing to a crowd of, even if a small crowd of like 50 people who are like really engaged, like it can't even compare. Like, the 1 million is nothing. Like, the room of real people there's so much, because it's like, you can feel the energy off of them. Like, it is more of a conversation, even though it is a performance. It's like you're getting something back from them, not just like a like or a comment or whatever. And so I totally understand how the live shows have that pull for you. Yeah, they do. I think they are experiences, you know, and there are certain videos that you remember where you were when you first watched it, and I know that my videos do create experiences for people, and that's a beautiful thing, but I would like to be a part of those experiences. Like, you know, is that selfish? Maybe. But, you know, I think I have the capacity to use a very different skill set, you know, which is to create spaces like that, because it really is a different skill set. You know, it's a whole new set of muscles and a whole new set of considerations for like how the art gets built. I'm just ready to flex those muscles at this point. And in addition to, you know, feeling like that's just what the world at Macro needs right now.
So Tor, I've heard from various musicians, like just not people I know, but just, you know,
sure,
the interviews and stuff, that it's a tough experience. Like, it's exhausting. You play a show, you immediately travel the next day. How do you keep up your creative energy? How do you keep yourself ready to make those connections in such a tough, exhausting situation?
I'll let you know. I think the thing I discovered when I was on the road the first time was sleep. Like, very genuinely, you just got to sleep way more than you normally do. But everyone has everyone has a certain thing that they need and that they will fight like hell for on tour, whether that is a consistent meal time, whether that is a certain number of hours of sleep, whether that is alone time for a certain, like whatever way you are going to take care of yourself, you learn what has the most impact, and you fight like absolute hell to make sure that that happens every day. And for me, I learned that's absolutely sleep. So learning how to sleep in a van and, making sure that I have the ability to fall asleep quickly and that I prioritize that rather than like going out or doing any of that. I found that my shows were just infinitely easier on me if I was less tired, and tour is just a sleep deprivation machine, and so you have to really fight against that and sleep in all the little pockets that you possibly can. So yeah, just finding what works for you in terms of what sustains your body. I know some musicians where it's actually more about making sure they're fed correctly, and it really is up to you to figure that out for like what your body needs. And what I loved about my first tour was every show was totally different. Like we had, I remember in New York City, we did 2 nights in New York City, and the first night people were dancing in the aisles and like banging on the tables. You could hear the silverware rattling on the tables from people like getting excited. And the second night, people were like just so very quiet and just wanted, it was like a theater show. They wanted to listen very intently. Yeah. And I was like, well, cool, and so I'm down with whatever people want to do. And so I love being able to walk into a space and go, I am as on this cliff as y'all are, and let's see what happens. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. So I would do that every night doing a show when I was in DC and doing professional theater. It was the same thing. Like you knew the show you were going to do, but I love playing off of an audience's energy and being able to give them what it feels like they collectively are needing in that moment. And so I think the aliveness of that is something that actually sustains me creatively and makes me really excited. But yeah, in terms of like creating content while I'm on tour, no, you got to delegate stuff. Like you do have to sort of like know that your job when you're on tour will not involve much social media. Like you will be working, and that will be your focus. And so, there's a couple of like management things I have to make sure are in place so that I can continue to do my job. But yeah, just got to find what sustains you and pass off the things that don't.
I do want to, get into like the whole creative process, because, you release your own music. You have an album that came out just a few months ago. How do you, where does it come from? Where do you find inspiration? I guess we can start there.
It's interesting. Like the idea of inspiration has changed a lot for me, honestly, in the last 2 years or so. But for a while, inspiration was this thing that would like smack me in some circumstance, and it was like, I describe it as a chokehold. It's this thing that there's an idea that comes and it will not leave me alone until I do it. Like it's a very sort of intense thing. Yeah. And I still have those every once in a while, and that is so exciting to me because I know that when I have those ideas, it's like I got to do it, And my whole first channel was that, literally. I was like, this idea for Let It Go, according to Google Translate, is not going to leave me alone. I was in the middle of 2 tech weeks for 2 different shows, and I just decided, I took like an hour and went into one of the practice rooms and made it. Like, it was that strong of an idea where I was like, I have no choice but to make this. And I had no intention of releasing it publicly. I sent it to my friends unlisted, and they were like, you need to make this public. Like, this is hilarious. And the rest is history. So I get really excited about those ideas that are just a nuisance. They won't let you go. And recently I've also, I've started doing a lot more like vocal improv work, which relies not on spontaneous inspiration, but on constant inspiration, like just being able to sort of call upon things. And I've learned a lot more. There's a teacher named Rhiannon who worked with Bobby McFerrin, who has a sort of set of teachings called the vocal river. And the idea is that you just constantly have a river of music that is flowing through you, and at any point you can just be like, like that's, there you go, there's a song, and you go. And so like I could technically write a song right now if I wanted to. Would it be good? I don't know. And so I think what I have loved about that is it has released me of being like, where is the inspiration? It's like, it's always there. It may not be like good, but it is always there. And so I think there's two different fundamentals to finding creativity, which is throw things at the wall as much as possible, and then one beautiful nugget will come out, or it's wait for the nugget. And I think I'm kind of always waffling in between those and finding what is working best for me at a given moment. So yeah, those are my sort of two different approaches to finding inspiration.
Yeah. So when you're writing what ends up being the 10 songs that are on your most recent album, It's All True, what's like, do you have a daily schedule where you're like, okay, I'm going to write for 3 hours? Do you, or weekly or whatever, or is it kind of just like, I'm feeling it come up, it might not be there or not, let me just, see what I can come up with? Like, how does the process of, I guess this would be like sort of the experimentation phase?
It's both. I think once, like, a lot of the songs for that album would hit me in like little pieces, and thankfully I had the extraordinary Johnny Del Toro and Hannah Tobias to write the album with. And so like Brooklyn, for example, we knew we were developing an album, but we didn't know like what all the songs were on it. And so we would have writing sessions where we would just block off a day and be like, let's see what happens. And I would bring in a bunch of stuff. And sometimes that was just words. Sometimes it was a hook and words. Sometimes it was just a melody, or literally just an idea. And we would kind of go from there. So like Brooklyn, for example, I had brought in all of these lyrics that I thought were like really interesting and cool. And then I was like, I want some kind of driving something. And Johnny started playing some chords, and I was like, yo, play that in 5/4. And he started to, and both Hannah and I went, what is that? And then we looked at my lyrics and started scanning like a certain portion of it over the chords, and realized it was incredibly cool. And so that was the pre-chorus. We had like just the pre-chorus to Brooklyn for like a month. And I was like, what is this thing? It's so cool. And so I ultimately was like, cool, so the chords underneath this is going to be the loop. And so I said to Johnny, I was like, I want to come into the studio and I want to write the rest of the song. Just, can you record those chords for me? And then we'll just loop those. And so we had like 3 minutes of just those looped chords. And I finished writing the lyrics after that, not knowing how the melody was going to sound, but I finished just lyrics knowing what I wanted to say. And knowing that I wanted, because it was a loop, that we could build everything on top of each other at the end. That was also a big goal, because I wanted that sort of like, I wanted that like cacophony at the end. And so we just put on the loop, and I just started singing the lyrics in all kinds of different ways until we landed on something that we liked. And so that's how that song came about. And that was like structured and scheduled, like, this is how we're gonna work on this. We don't know what it's gonna be, but we are gonna like schedule time to do this. Whereas Wear Me Down, for example, that all came in like one go, and just inspiration struck, and that song was written, like no edits, just boom. Wow. And so it does vary, like, and there's one song, like It's the End, that when I first wrote it, it was a very unfortunately Christian rock sounding song, like completely different, totally different, so different. And it went to master. Like, we produced the whole thing and it went to master. It was going to be a single. And my manager was like, dude, your target is here and you are somewhere else, man. Like, I know what you're going for and this is not it. And I'm like, I agree and I hate that. And I sat on that thing for about 2 years. And
wow.
And I knew the idea of making love while the world was ending was a really good idea. I wasn't in touch with that idea enough to be able to write that well at the time. And then I was at home and Roe v. Wade got overturned. And within that time, I had started doing the TikTok thing and the folky thing and doing like a banging on my desk and singing sort of style of video. And so I scrapped the song, went back to the idea, because I was like, the world is ending and everything is horrible and I just want to like be revolutionary and make love. And so I started like banging on my desk and just singing like all these different ideas that the original song had given me, but like maybe two of the lyrics, you know, made it. And the chorus is like similar, but very distinctively different in its tone and everything. And so like that song came from a place that is seemingly so not relevant, but just allowing myself to take the space and time from it actually got to the core of what I wanted to say. And the two songs, like, they wouldn't exist without each other. And so, yeah, there's some songs that are like magical and appear, and then there's some songs that I call dinosaur songs, because it's like excavating a dinosaur and being like, there's the little bone and there's the other bone. Like, it's, yeah, you're just constantly working at it. So yeah, I prefer the fast songs. Sometimes dinosaur songs really frustrate me, but and you're like, should I just give up? But you know, I'm a very persistent person, so I tend to just beat a dead horse until it's something. So
right, yeah. Well, it's like when with writing a script for a video or something, it's like when it all can come out in one sitting, it feels clean. It feels like, dang, that's what it was supposed to be. But when you're like tooling with it for a long time, it can start to feel like, is this because like it's a fundamentally bad premise? Like, shouldn't it have been done by now?
Yeah, what do you find when you're doing a script? Is it like mostly clean stuff, or do you find that you're more tooling with stuff like more often?
It's usually more. A lot of times it can be like putting out a first draft and then letting it sit for a while, and then coming, like the best ones, I'm able to kind of write it in one sitting, maybe two, and then let it sit for a while, come back to it, give it a revision, and then it feels like it's ready to go. Because sometimes you don't really know if it's good or not. Like, I don't know if you have felt this about your songs. You're like, I don't know if this is any good. Let me just come back to it and see.
I was gonna say that time that you mentioned of like doing the first two drafts and then waiting and coming back to it is like, that is essential. I've done so many things where in the moment I was like, yeah, and then I come back to it and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, you know, and developing that taste so that you are more accurate to what you want to be earlier it's incredibly difficult, but the value of that wait time is one that, as such an impatient person and as someone who definitely feeds into the like, I'm a social media person and I need to be constantly releasing something. Yeah. I will often release things before when it's too early, and so it's a hard balance. But that time that you mentioned is really essential. It's cool to hear that you do that too, because it's
the incubation period, if you will.
Yeah, good word for it.
Yeah, a lot of times it's unintentional. It's sort of like I don't think it's very good, so I'm just like, whatever, and I forget about it, and then I come back, I'm like, oh, actually, it was okay. So
yeah, it can go either way. You either come back and you're like, wow, I'm good, or you come back and you're like, no.
Glad I didn't put that out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So many videos I've made, it's like, I wish I had the extra week so that I could have done something with it. And some of the videos I feel most proud of had that extra week or two where I kind of just let it sit in the shelf, you know.
Totally.
I want to ask specifically about lyrics, because it sounds like you write from a specific idea, like you have a message. And, it's like every songwriter kind of goes about lyrics differently. I've heard some people just kind of like scat, the melody line, and then words come out, and then they start to develop an idea around it. Whereas other people will like write an essay form of what they are really trying to say, and then they find like hints of what will actually become the song. So what is your approach to the lyrics?
Entirely both. I would say more often the most common thing is like a melody and a lyric for some kind of hook will come together initially, and then I will word vomit like all over a page. I have a notes app like lyric thing where I just sort of jot down whatever I hear, and sometimes I'll go back to that and try to pull stuff from that, and then I'll just start singing what I have on the page and see what comes up. But I've come up with like really beautiful melodies and been like, that I know in this melody that this particular set of words just feels so good, and like that, like that's how this melody wants to be expressed, and so I need to cater all the lyrics around it to make that work. And so yes, I definitely do both. More often I do the word vomit and find a melody to it, but every once in a while I'll like It's All True, for example. I had an idea, which was I want to talk about, two things being true at the same time. And I had It's All True at the same time. And I think I had a word vomit, but mostly I was like, I want a like shuffle-ish song, and then it changes into just straight 4/4. Like that's what I knew. I just knew I wanted to be like shing dum ga ga da dum ga. That's all I knew. And so that was the first time that I ever actually started a song with a beat. Just the idea that's like the groove that I wanted. And same with the single that I have coming out. I was like, I want to write like a shung dum ga 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 ga. Like I just knew I wanted that groove. And so I was like, well, we're gonna find something that works with that. And so every once in a while I'll start from a groove as well. And I'll just recently I have a looper station, and so I'll just develop that groove with like beatboxing and like hitting stuff, and just have that on, and then just sing over it and see what happens, and document some stuff in the looper and see what I can build. So that's how this most recent single came out, actually.
Wow, yeah. So, and when did that come out?
That's coming out August 25th.
Oh boy, that's right around the corner. We got to get this podcast out in time for it.
If it is out by then, yeah. It's called Break and Breathe In, and it was very much developed by just like singing over stuff that I was putting down, because I knew I wanted that particular feel. And so that was fun.
I have a few questions to wrap up with that I'd like to ask every guest about creativity. So have you ever heard of Brian Eno's oblique strategy cards?
I've not, no.
So basically it's like it's like a deck of cards, and he has stuff written on them, and if he feels stuck creatively, he pulls a card and it says something, and it's supposed to get him, looking at things from a different perspective, kind of.
Nice.
So I've kind of stolen the idea and changed it to creative cards, and it's the same exact idea. So the question I like to ask is what you would put on these cards, and specifically there are three different general things that could be written: a question, a command, or just like a general statement. And whatever it is is intended to kind of just help the person who is creatively stuck to get out of it somehow. And so I guess I could ask you to do all three. You could just do one of those three types. You could do as many as you want, just kind of opening it up to you. If anything comes to mind of what you would put on a card to get someone going creatively.
I think one of the big questions I have been asking myself these days in particular is, or I'll be like, hey, you're thinking about how you feel. How do you feel? Like there's a lot of moments where I'll be writing from how I think I feel rather than how I feel. So that would be something I would try to prompt myself to reflect on. And another option would probably be like, or even just like, how are you feeling right now? Like sometimes just sitting down and writing three things that are true. Like write down three things that are true right now. That's again tapping into that river of creativity that is always running through people. So sit down, write three things that are true. And so how do you think you feel? Three things that are true. And what's another way to say that, I think is the other thing. So I often am I'm a very wordsy person. I rely on language a lot to communicate with the people I love in my life and in my career. But I am learning these days that melody and rhythm and visual and like all of these other ways of expression are just as important. And so it's like, hey, instead of saying that with a lyric, could you say that in a melody? Instead of saying that with a lyric, could you say that in a groove? Like, what are other ways to say what you're trying to say? And so just, opening up myself to the idea that maybe I don't have to be as literal with the lyrics, but I can create a feeling, through a different medium, I think would be something that I would want to remind myself consistently.
Those are great. Like those are not even similar to ones that I have thought of before. So that's
Cool.
very insightful. Thank you for that.
Wait, I'm curious. I'm curious to hear like one of yours.
Uh, so yours is, how could you say this a different way? One of my questions is, how could this be less boring?
Fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of these I wrote down that just like don't make sense kind of on purpose to make you kind of think about it. So
Sure.
did you try turning it off and on again? So it's kind of like,
That's so good.
what does that mean?
love that.
And then I guess like one of the invitations, like a command would be, let your mistakes live. So I mean, it's kind of like a common thing for creatives. We want to like edit things before they have a chance, but it's like, no, let them live a little bit, let them breathe and see what happens, because they can develop, they can take on a mature form that maybe doesn't quite look like a mistake anymore.
That idea literally just made me take a deep breath. That's beautiful. I love that.
Well,
That's so nice. I really like that a lot. I think that's it's something I don't give my mistakes permission to breathe very much, but that's a really good idea. I think the idea of did you turn it on and off again, something that I do find is I'll be writing from a place of I want this to be good, or I want this to be successful, or something like that. And my way of turning something on and off again is like, hey, go do something else, or go sing something else. And a lot of times that'll just get me like back in touch with my body and brain and like why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I find that I often have to turn myself on and off again in order to like restart and refresh.
It's so easy to get like so into it and so close to whatever you're working on that you just like don't have any idea of what to do with it anymore, and you're just like spinning your wheels.
Yeah, totally.
I'm trying to think of the computer equivalent of it where you need to turn it off and on. You're just
it's like the rainbow wheel of death.
Exactly.
Like sometimes your brain becomes the spinning wheel of death, and you just have to be like, okay, just press the power button, turn it off, turn it back on again. See what happens.
Well, Malinda, thanks so much. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, you too, man. Thank you for having me on. This has been a blast. I'm so excited by everything you're working on, and excited for whatever you've got coming up next.
Thanks. You've given me a lot of inspiration, a lot to think about. So I appreciate that. And good luck.
Problem.
Good luck on your tour coming up.
Thank you. I appreciate it.